Hello and welcome to Ditching Hourly. I'm Jonathan Stark, and today I am joined by return guest, repeat offender, Geraldine Carter. Geraldine, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jonathan. Thanks so much for having me.
You're pulling ahead of Blair in the most number of episodes and will now be tied with Ron Baker for
Oh
max number
boy,
of return
uh,
appearances. Yes.
game on.
Yeah. I'm hoping Blair will take that as a challenge. So we have a. I'm really excited about this conversation. I think this is going to be fun for us and for the audience. And what we're going to talk about is the before and after of Geraldine melting the pyramid, which we're going to define that term. But first, could you tell folks who haven't heard one of your previous episodes who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so Geraldine Carter, I work with single owner CPAs making mid six figures. Their real problem is stress, not money, because they're just buried under a pile of client work. And we focus on fixing the stress, which we do by optimizing the firm. And the result is fewer, better clients at higher prices. Stress goes way down, hours go down by a third, and revenue stays the same. And we do all that without hiring.
Very exciting. Sounds familiar, in fact.
Mm-hmm. It's a nice model.
I love it. So I would like it if you could define the term melting the pyramid, because I'm curious. I'm curious if it's the same as I picture it.
So, in terms of my business, more specifically, I think of it like going from working with clients in a one on one capacity at the pointy top of the pyramid. And then
Mhm.
the next layer down is working in a 1 to 10 kind of capacity. So, that could, in my case, that's group. I created a mastermind advanced program. And then the next layer down from there is a call it 1 to 100 capacity. So, for me, that's a membership community, and then from there 1 to 1,000, that might be, if you have a something that sells in a 1 to 1,000 sort of um, ratio, maybe that's books, video courses, and then down from there 1 to 10,000, maybe your email list. So going from working in a one-on-one fashion, the top of the pyramid, to progressively melting the top of the pyramid. I no longer do one-on-one coaching or client work. And then the transition that we're talking about today is that going from a 1 to 10 capacity and melting that down to a 1 to 100 capacity and just keeping on going down from there.
Excellent. Better than I would have put it. So yeah, just to clarify the metaphor, the size of the sort of strata, the level of the pyramid that one is at, is sort of representative of the number of clients that they would handle in a year, just some time period. So just like you said, a lot of people I work with, they're sort of just this tippity top of the pyramid, just floating there up in the air with nothing under it. And they're just doing one-to-one client work always. That's all they do. And that's a great place for people who are experts to use value pricing to scale up their business. But you wanted to scale in a different way, and adding a layer below each of the, whatever one you're on, you kind of build the layer underneath you. You need the size of that layer is sort of representative of the number of people in it, the audience, or the people who are buying it, the people that you could service without disappointing them, So setting expectations at each level down to serve more people, and probably, almost certainly at a lower price. So as you go down, you're sort of selling lower ticket stuff to more people. And in theory, I suppose one could start at the top, continue to do one on one, and then build layers down, and never melt the pyramid, just build the pyramid from the top down. But since you're a soloist, like I'm a soloist, the idea is to move that delivery capacity, use the delivery capacity that we'd use at the very top of the pyramid for one-on-one stuff, and repurpose that time. Stop doing that and repurpose that time to build the layers as you go down, so it kind of flattens out as you get closer to the bottom. Anyway, so maybe cone would be a better metaphor, especially if we're talking about melting. But pyramid was how it first occurred to me. So take us back in time to, well, right now, we decided to have this conversation now because you would you have just recently had what I would consider an unmitigated success of getting down to the next level of the pyramid. And while all of that transition phase was still fresh in your mind, I was glad to hear that you were willing to come on and kind of share it while it is still fresh, so other people who are maybe thinking along the same lines can benefit from it, because it's pretty easy to picture what you would need, I think, for each level. But the tricky part is, if you're on the level above it, how do you get there? That transition phase when you're still doing both is fraught with difficulty, and lots of people have lots of questions about the transition itself. Not like they
Mm-hmm.
kind of know what to do, they can guess what to do when you get there, but how do you move from one to the other? So if you could take us back in time to the the stage right before you made the current transition, how would you describe that?
So I was running a I was running two advanced group programs, each with single digit numbers in them. And they were both going really well. I'd been running them for about 3 years. In fact, this would turn over 3 years this month
Hmm.
had I stayed with it. And I was like, there were a couple things happening right at the same time, like the stars were lining up. And one of them was that I had a conversation with a couple of friendlies that
Hmm.
was 3 hours long about just like girl business chat, basically. And shooting the breeze, but also talking about business, their businesses, my business, what was going on, all the things. And they dropped a couple of gems in that conversation about what they wanted. And these are people who have been around for a long time in my ecosystem, and they articulated something that I knew in my gut and had sensed but hadn't been able to articulate.
Mm.
That conversation happened in mid-February.
Of
Then
2024,
25. Yep.
25. That
Yep.
was this year.
Yeah. Well, there are a couple of those, but there was one in February. There was a previous one last June of
Oh, potato
2024.
chip one, that's what I'm thinking.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The infamous potato chip and fizzy drink conversation that spawned this whole thing.
Yeah.
And so I was set to launch my two mastermind programs as planned, late April, early May, right?
Hmm.
And I was in the middle of my launch SOP. The thing was already running.
Hmm.
And because it's a 6-week launch SOP, basically. And the math isn't exact, but like it was like the space shuttle was on the launch pad, right? And we were doing the T minus countdown. I was already in.
Hmm.
And we had this conversation. I was like, this is really interesting. And then March 1st, Circle, the platform, launched its AI knowledge agent. And I was like, holy shit, that thing's amazing. I need to like stop the bus.
Yeah. So Circle is a community, like an online community management software.
Yes. Yeah. And then you're always on my case, rightfully so, for not changing things. Like, knock it off, stop changing it up. You just made it. But I always like to make things better as fast as I can.
Hmm.
So I had this running in my head of like, oh my God, I need to change. Like, I need to make some key changes to the structure of how I deliver my programs. Not the content, not the knowledge, not the expertise, but just it's hard to think. It's digital, so it's hard to think in like 2x4s and plywood, but like the physical structure of it, I need to make some structural changes to it. But oh my God, like I'm already in the middle of my launch.
Right.
Like the ball is rolling down the hill. And then it was spring break. And then April 2nd, you and I had a coaching session that was like one of two marathon coaching sessions.
Hmm.
And I was like, secretly, I was like, holy shit, I'm going to need to sell Jonathan Stark on this idea. I have to do this, but there's no way he's going to let me do it. And I walked into that conversation being like, there's no way. There's no way, but I've got to sell him on this idea because this has to happen. It's better. It's going to be so much better.
Hmm.
But oh my gosh, my thing launches like April 29th. So if it happens, I gotta get on my giddy up. So,
Right.
anyways, we had that conversation, and then and in that conversation, we went all around the block, and then we had a second conversation 2 weeks later, mid-April, and it was just so crystal clear that making the move was better for everybody. But
Right.
holy smokes, the timeline was tight.
Yeah. So let's put a little bit of detail to flesh this out for people because they probably have, we know what we're talking about, but uh, what was the what were all of the crazy things that had to be done to switch from this kind of like Slack based, launch based, time boxed mastermind program, sort of like a hybrid mastermind coaching program that lasts for like 3 or 4 months, and it's a high ticket. I think you were selling it at 9,500 for the time period, which is public information. I suppose that's okay to share.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And uh, and so this is time boxed, very cohort based kind of thing in Slack. And to me, one of the tricky parts was that a lot of people wanted to stay in the Slack room even after the initial period. So you allowed people to renew. So there were people like still in there that weren't going to get essentially wouldn't normally get booted out, air quotes. So you didn't have like a clean break opportunity from sort of one uh, model to this newer model, which maybe you could describe what you wanted to transition them to and why it would be better for everyone.
Okay. So we'll take the first question, which was, can you lay out all the things that needed to change? So,
Mm-hmm.
number one, we had to figure out the offers. What were they exactly? Did they remain like, were we just changing digital platforms from Slack and Kajabi, which is where the videos were housed, over to Circle and keeping the structure and the delivery of the program the same, or were we making adjustments to it? So we had to figure that out. And that question alone has like 20 small but very important details.
Mm-hmm.
And if so, then we need to adjust the sales page. I need to have a friendly tear down the sales page just to make sure I thought of everything. Everything makes sense. Is it clear? Do you have any questions? If that's all check, 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 then next is okay, we need to figure out the messaging. How do you frame the messaging? Because you can't
Mm-hmm.
just say the facts. You've got to put the facts in the context of here's what's happening, here's why this is happening, here's why I think this is better for everybody, and then figure out when to send the messaging. And you've got to figure out like in what order the messaging goes out to, in what groups, right, in concentric circles, because I have different sort of similar to the pyramid, I have different layers or kind of buckets, not buckets, but layers of clients at different levels in different places, different histories, different contexts. Not infinite numbers, but probably easily four, if not six, kind of different clients in different stages.
Right.
So the messaging has to be tailored to them. And then, oh, by the way, you've got to build the entire technology for Circle, which I found out on the fly.
Yeah.
And then the better everything is thought out, the smoother it rolls out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the short list of everything that, of the big items that went into it.
Right. Yeah. And people, it's not obvious, people wouldn't know this, but you had launched the old style of Mastermind many times and had a detailed and long SOP and automations and email sequences and all of these things. So there's a lot of stuff that needs to be remembered. So a lot of little things to remember and decide on.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And by long, I think you mean 500 rows of steps long.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It was
So
long.
it's a lot.
And multiple tabs and like of emails, 16 launch emails and flipping on and off sales pages and checkout pages and that kind of thing.
Right.
So there was a lot to it. And yeah, there was a lot to it.
So what's the better? You said a couple times that the new way, air quotes, is going to be better for everyone. So there's the old way in Slack and in Kajabi, and there's the new way in Circle. And what were the what were the reasons you felt like you really needed to convince me that this was going to be a better model for you and for the participants?
So for the participants first, one thing that had been bugging me was this sort of absence of a corpus callosum between the different sub communities, because I had an advanced program that was down to 25 hours, and then the sort of main primary flagship program, which is like it's called Mastermind, but it's more like training and group coaching. And those two groups of people were siloed in their respective Slack workspaces.
Mm-hmm.
they couldn't easily talk to each other. I could, if I thought it was useful or beneficial or they needed to connect, people needed to connect, I could, add one person back into the other Slack workspace. But then, make a personal introduction and say, hey, so and so wanted to talk to you about X. I thought this might be useful for you guys to have a conversation. And then similarly, in my community, which is now hosted on Circle, those people are on an entirely different digital platform. So like it's not even the same brain.
Hmm.
And there was no way for those people to talk to each other. And yet there were a lot of people and conversations that I could visibly see where connections, being able to easily connect, would be enormously valuable and useful. And yet they were constrained by the absence of where information and connections could easily travel back and forth. That was the thing that bugged me the most.
Hmm.
And being able to have everybody on Circle where they all had access to the same room, but then had separate sort of lounges at the back with a private door, made everything, it solved a bunch of problems. It solved the fluidity of information problem while maintaining the intimacy and high touch experience of a small group.
Perfect. Cool. But you also, I don't know if it's worth talking about, but a big change was switching it to not be time boxed.
Mm-hmm.
How did you, for the audience, how did you think about that? So switching from 4 month program for $9,500 over to what, and why is that more interesting or better?
So, working with accountants and CPAs is interesting in that they have a very seasonal business. Obviously, there's tax season, but what most people are probably not aware of is that there's a fall tax season with September and October deadlines where there can be a giant crunch. And it's like the sleeper tax season.
Yeah.
And then you come into November, and all of a sudden, there goes a week due to Thanksgiving, unless you're Canadian, out of your calendar, and it starts to be year-end stuff, and clients are calling you about, hey, I'm thinking about buying a truck or a piece of equipment, and can what my tax bill is going to be. So clients are starting to call about tax payments and things and planning and looking toward the future. And then December has a bunch of year-end stuff, and oh, by the way, there goes 2 weeks for the holidays. And then January has a bunch of cleanup from the previous year. So
And the bulk of your
the
target market is overworked as it is
yes,
by
yep.
design.
Yes, by absence of design, we should say.
Well, by your design. So, like, your design is that those are the people you're trying to help initially, people who are working
Yes.
60, 80 hours a week.
Yeah, who are swamped a good part of the year.
Hmm.
And the lull for them is May, June, July, and part of August. So the 4 month program just presented some challenges in that, like, for the client, for the buyer, it can create this thought of like, now's not a good time.
Hmm.
And I wanted something that was more. And the other piece is that um, typically it takes 4 months to start seeing meaningful results in doing this work of reshaping your firm, and and it often takes longer, right? It takes 4 to 8 months, just depending on how big your firm is and how much reshaping needs to be done. So the time box of 4 months was great initially because it kind of sets some parameters for mentally how long do I think about, what is this product that I'm buying. But in terms of actually moving through the content, we needed something more open ended at the back. So the changing from a cohort based 4 month time box to a, hey, I have 3 spots open starting on this day. Raise
Hmm.
your hand if you're interested, and then stay as long as you need to. And then when you feel like you've made the progress you need, hey, there's a follow up VIP lounge where you can continue doing the work, but at a lower level of intensity once you're done with the bulk of the reshaping,
Hmm.
just made the two programs more flexible in a way that made a lot more sense to match their real life experience and the natural cycle of their annual timing.
Right, right. So cool. And it's you have a very interesting model too, because you have it's unprecedented in my experience. It's sort of like it's interesting that it's not a linear scale up where no, a lot of times you'd have, oh, you got good, better, best, slot yourself into the area where you need to be, and it's like, whatever, $50 a month, $100 a month, $150 a month, choose your own adventure. Where this is much more, um, the middle tier is kind of like meant to be not forever. It's meant to be not forever.
Yes.
And then
Right.
but it's a prerequisite for the VIP area,
Yeah.
which I think was, I mean, obviously I thought it was a good idea because we talked about it, um, but it's unusual. I think that's unusual. I'm not aware of anything else that has that kind of, middle tier of the subscription chart is like the most expensive.
Yeah. It we did talk about this a lot, and one thing you said to me a way long time ago was so often the bulk of the value in working with the client happens at the front end of the engagement because they're coming to you with a serious pain point and they want that splinter taken out now because every time they walk it hurts. And that's what I experience with my clients, that they're working 60, 80 hours a week. They have 50% more clients than they can actually get to, and they're stressed to the gills and they don't know how to make it go away. They've tried everything else that they can possibly think of. And I'm something of a last resort.
Yeah,
I guess I'll try this coaching thing.
pull the
And,
ripcord. Hmm.
and um, so what we do is business fundamentals, right? They've built a house, but they've built it on bare ground. So they try and build up, but there's no foundation and the walls keep buckling under the weight of adding a second story.
Hmm.
And they don't understand why, but what they don't recognize is that they never built a foundation underneath their house, poured the concrete, built the pillars so that now they can have supporting walls and posts and build up from there. And the deeper you dig your foundation, the higher up you can go. But nobody sees the foundation when you're at ground level. It's kind of invisible. And frankly, it's unsexy. Who wants to waste their time building a foundation? So, and that's not where you live, right? You live in the house, but we
Right.
all know that a house needs a strong foundation. So, we're doing the foundation work, and it is essential work, and it solves the most painiest of the pain problem.
Yeah. Right.
And that is a finite process that typically takes 4 to 8 months just depending on how big the firm is. But once it's done, the bulk of it is done. And then you can kind of move in your house and you can, put the artwork up and maybe you change the paint color on a wall or you move some furniture around. But the hard work is done.
Hmm.
And then people still want to work on their businesses. Once their hard work is done, the foundation is built, they still have progress that they need to make. But the the big splinters are out.
Right.
So the value proposition has come down.
Hmm.
Therefore, it makes sense for the price to come down. And people kind of want to take their foot off the gas a little bit because the accelerator is like, you've got your foot on the pedal
Yeah.
and they need a little bit, they prefer a little bit of a reprieve from that pace.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's really resonating with me. I just went through another black belt candidate training for like 12-week
Just
period, and
another
it's just
black
like,
belt. I know, as one does.
as one does. And then and you get out of it. Like yesterday, I was like, oh, I passed. I don't have to do that like every day. Like practicing keto every
Totally.
day. I can take
Yes.
a break, but still you get into it's but you're through the looking glass. You're on the other side of something. It's not back to normal. It's not like a vacation where you come back and like, oh, we're back to normal.
Yeah, and I want to take my business to the next level. I want to think about scaling, add a video content library, start an email list, start a podcast, things that are by and large not at all done in the accounting space.
Hmm.
So we are having advanced level business conversations. So there's a lot of value there,
Hmm.
but it's sort of like a phase change. And if you could picture the energy that goes into the curve to go from water to steam, you got to put a lot of energy to make the change. But then once the material is changed and it's at its new normal,
Hmm.
it takes a lot less energy to maintain the new normal.
Right. Yeah, it's great. Really cool. So let's, if we could jump around a little bit, I'd love to jump to your experience of the launch of this, the actual launch phase of the accelerator, the new version, and we, you referred to your 500-point checklist for the old way and what it looked like the new way.
Yeah. Do you want me to talk about everything that?
Well, not every little thing, but but just the broad strokes. I mean, like, I know it it was so much easier. You were like, this can't possibly work. That was my impression. That was my take on what your impression was.
Oh, like what's the new launch SOP?
Right.
Oh my god. So it's it is less than 100 rows long now, and can't wait to go out and clean the remaining 75% that don't need to be there,
Mm,
because now the launch is like, I mean, I even hesitate to call it a launch
right.
because it's more like informing people who are already in the main room of my community that spots are becoming available. Raise your hand if you're interested. I will let you know when the launch day is going to be or when we kick off. And I will post a fresh post when the room is open. And the first, 3 people to come in are the ones who come in. And like, that is it.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I have in fairness, I'm exaggerating the case. Surely I have some checklists to make sure that, I don't know, websites point to the right
Yeah.
place.
There must be something, right?
There must be something, but in terms of a 500-point checklist, it's like it is so short.
Yeah.
There will be some onboarding messages. There will be some checklists to make sure that everybody is welcomed in smoothly and that they're oriented and they know where they are, welcome themselves, introduce, etc. But boy, has it cut down by like easily a factor of 10.
Yeah, I mean, for people who have never done a traditional launch of like a cohort based workshop or course or something like that, that's not evergreen, it's just periodic. It is so complicated. There's so many little, if you want it to work, there are a lot of little details, and you'll have, you probably have a mailing list. You probably have different segments of the mailing list, like early birds or wait list or interest list, and different messaging for all of them. And the timing, you have to I've created spreadsheets to work backwards from a launch date or a course begin date all the way back to, like, okay, so 3 months out I'm going to be sending these emails and da 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 da, and compare. And then when you were like, when I was convinced, and we came up with a plan to take, how are we going to move the party from Slack to Circle for the people that are still in Slack, um, and all the other details. But all, it's like, okay, once it's like, you're like, okay, now how do I this is just my impression of it. I could be wrong, but you were like, you're like, okay, now it's like launch time, because it was already kind of launch time
Mm-hmm.
when this transitional happened. And you're like, well, all right, now can we jump on a call and like go through what the launch thing would be? It was something like that. And I was like, I was confused. I was like, well, just tell the people in the room, like, you don't have to launch. And my impression of you're like, surely it's not that easy.
Yeah.
And then, so what happened when you did tell the people in the room?
So before I told the people in the room, I floated a trial balloon just to make sure there was interest. And I got basically 8 kind of thumbs ups. And I was like, great. Okay. So um, there were some things we had to do. I had to do a bunch of messaging to the people who were in Slack because their program was ending. The plane was kind of landing on the tarmac and driving over to the terminal. They were going
Mm,
to get off, wander through the terminal, and then go to the next gate. And, to extend the metaphor, walk across the terminal, get on the down to 25-hour plane.
right,
It's, you got 3 options basically. So
right.
so those planes were coming into land. That's a high touch program. I wanted to be there to usher them to the gate where they wanted to go, answer any questions they had along the way. Meanwhile, keeping an eye on numbers and capacity, because we only had at first 6, and then we decided 8, and then we decided 10 spots.
Mhm.
But really wanting to make sure that that was going to fill,
Right.
and but not overfill, obviously. But also I wanted to make sure that I had a spot for any of my sort of VIPers, so to speak, who wanted a spot. So trying to make sure that they got first priority, but they were in the air and kind of out of radio contact because it was April 15th.
All
And,
right.
you know,
Yeah.
so they were kind of
Yeah.
coming into land, and then they come into land and immediately the first thing they do is go on vacation for 4 days.
Right.
And then I had folks in the main room of the community, so to whom I'd floated the trial balloon, and I was like, okay, this is coming. And then I mean, at some point it was go time, right? Because it needed to launch May 1st. So timing just drove a lot of decisions. Like, we don't have time to faff around here.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like
So,
a complicated piece was there are the sort of people in the very inner circle, and then there's a ring around that and a ring around that of people who are sort of that have priority, or they've it's not owed to them, but you know what I mean.
yeah.
It's like they should get right of first refusal, and then you go to the
Yep.
next tier, they get next first right of or next right of refusal, and then out to like the mailing list, and then like the public on the website and that
Yes.
kind of thing. So you can't just announce it on your email list. You have to. So there was some a little bit of complexity there.
Yeah. Yes. It compounded by
Yeah,
April
the
10th through
vacations.
April 20th.
Uh-huh.
So, but I had the good thing was I had a pretty strong sense, my finger on the pulse of who wanted what and where they might go.
Hmm.
So when I announced it in the main room of Circle, immediately there were 6 people who were like, yeah, sign me up.
Hmm.
So that was great. That was affirmation that things were headed in the right direction. And kind of in onesie twosies, I would make contact with my high touch people, and they would make a choice, tell me where they wanted to go, and great. So it was very much a combination of like, here are the deadlines, plane needs to take off, I need to message people now. I'm just going to go one by one and figure out, keep track of where people are, what conversation I'm having with them, and usher them to where they need to go whenever they make contact with me. And then at some point, like, you can only hold the plane for so long before, like, the
Yeah.
plane's got to take off. But I did hold the plane as long as I could for my VIPs.
Hmm.
And then at that point, I had one spot left, and I put the message out to the main room, hey, I have one spot left. If you want it, take advantage of it now, because tomorrow I'm going to open this up to the wait list, and there are 102 names on the wait list.
Hmm.
And I was like, I got to step away from my desk because it was a lot of thinking
Yeah.
for like 3 weeks. And I went for a run, and at my turnaround point, I couldn't resist. I checked my phone, and somebody had scooped up the last spot.
Nice.
Yeah. So that was really cool because, when you pivot like this and sell out,
Yeah.
it's really gratifying.
Yeah,
Or
it is.
it's like gratifying, but it's also like, oh, phew.
Relief, right?
Because those were some big decisions that we made.
Yeah,
They
I
weren't life or
mean,
death decisions,
no, but it's a
but they were
significant
big.
portion of your annual revenue,
Yeah,
you
like two
know.
thirds of it.
Right. So if people were like confused or put off by it, or just didn't like the model,
Yeah.
because you're switching from a one-time buying decision essentially to a a high ticket. I think the prices are public, aren't they? I'm not
Yeah.
sure. So what are people opting into here for? So some you at your turnaround point, you looked and you said, okay, great, I have a new subscriber at what price?
$9.95 a month.
Yeah, so basically $1,000, and they're probably, and the expectation is it's probably going to take them at least 3 or 4 months to go through
Yeah.
and get the benefit. But it's an open-ended. It's a different buying decision. It's like, so it's
Hmm.
like, what if Netflix was $1,000 a month? Like that's in one sense, it's much more affordable,
Hmm.
and the payments are spread out. So
Yeah.
on the one hand, it's yeah, I mean, it's just a better deal. And a better deal is not the right way to put it. It's probably going to be cheaper. If you really do go through it in 4 months, it's going to be significantly cheaper than it would have been otherwise. But it is a different kind of decision. Deciding to sign up for a pricey subscription versus like this one time, like, okay, I'm going to put my big boy pants on and swipe this credit card, and then I never have to think about it again, really. Then I
Yeah.
just focus on the stuff, and I'm committed to doing that because I just made a big investment. So this is a different model, and people could have been turned off by it. It's possible.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
it was very very cool to, and to loop this back to the beginning, the pyramid metaphor. Um, I want to set a little bit of context because it was only like the year before, if my bad memory is correct, that you started the community in the first place. Was it the year before or 2 years?
Yeah. So the seed for the community was June of less than a year ago.
Yeah, that was the potato chip conversation, right?
Yes. Yep. And
And
then soft launch was October. So you're looking at 6 months ago.
okay, so that was the beginning, and that went great. It continues to go well. You've got your sign up numbers are I think a little bit better than projected, and so we've got that was you building the layer of the pyramid beneath the one that you were currently on.
Yes.
And then this, so like mastermind, the 4 month mastermind program was kind of like a layer. It wasn't the tippity top because you used to do one-on-one coaching. That was the tippity
Mm-hmm.
top. And then you went to this, single digit group thing launched twice a year. And then you built the community layer under that, which could scale to hundreds potentially.
Mm-hmm.
And then you melted down the cohort thing above. And this transition, this is that piece of the transition where now everyone's basically in the community, but they're at different tiers inside of the community, and it's all subscription model across the board,
Yeah.
which which as you said earlier is the what is it, callosum, corpus callosum, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Is that your brain tissue, or oh, that's the thing in the middle of your brain hemispheres?
Yeah. That
Okay,
sends information between the two hemispheres.
okay, that's gross. Anyway, so um, now everyone's in there and they've got this ability to communicate with a big no, it's something like you've got a bunch of people in there that have all they've taken their vitamin G. They are like they've drunk the Geraldine Kool-Aid, and they think in a very particular way, and they're a particular type of person who's not trying to build an empire. They're trying to get their lives back. They're trying to have a firm that they love, and they're not dreading going to work every day. And money's not really the problem. It's more the chaos is the problem. So you've got
Yes.
this group of people who are, they have a particular psychographic makeup, and now they can all communicate. They've got access to all the material that's appropriate to whatever phase they're in. But it's also way better for you.
Mm-hmm.
And in certainly we've talked about the simplicity, but there's also, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth. What are some other ways that are better now that you've melted that pyramid? What are some of the efficiencies or just plain old relief that you've experienced or you've noticed after melting away that previous pyramid layer above you?
Certainly the efficiency of the launch situation, because even though I launched 3 times a year and I had a 500-point process, each launch had its own idiosyncrasies because of tax season in April, because the September one was the normal one, but then the January one got interfered with by the holidays.
Mm,
So there was a level of complexity there that was tricky to manage. Um, and but the another one is the ability to send information in a much more scaled way. So there are things that I wanted to teach and talk about that apply to almost all of my clients, no matter where they are. But if they're in 3 different places, I've got to transmit the information 3 different times. And then if they're in Slack, a Slack thread looks different than a circle post. So the formatting is different. And you
mm,
can't, if you do copy paste from Slack to circle, it loses the formatting and the emojis and the bull like and it wants a picture, oh my God.
yeah.
So it was, uh, that was inefficient. Um, there were so many things that I wanted to teach in a one to many capacity that are the same. And it's regardless of where you are. And often, lots of messages need to be repeated, said in different ways at different times, because sometimes you hear a message and you're not ready to get the concept yet, but
Mm.
3 months later you hear it said in a slightly different way and you're like, oh, that's what that is. So being able to have everybody in Slack but have three tiers, I mean, sorry,
Circle.
everybody
Yeah.
in Circle but have three tiers inside Circle just makes accelerates just makes it so much more efficient to teach the information and the concepts that I want to teach, answer questions that 30% of their peers in that room have at any given time.
Hmm.
It's so much more scaled. And because that information can get delivered better and faster, clients inside well, Slack and Circle, but now all Circle, get better, faster results without me being directly involved,
Right.
which is kind of blowing my mind because as I take a step back so that I can teach information in a more scaled capacity from afar, I'm watching people move through my program, through my content, and they are getting results without me necessarily ever having coached them.
Hmm.
And that's a crazy thing to see because so often we think I've got to work with my clients one on one for them to get the information and the progress that they need, but that's not true.
Hmm. It doesn't hurt that you have a bunch of experienced people who have been, people
Yes.
from, so there are people who have the karate metaphor again. It's like there's blue belts in the room with the white belts,
Yes.
and the blue belts are like, well, here's how that actually, that you skipped a step in the form. Here's how it
Yep.
goes, and they're not black belts, but they're good enough to teach a white belt.
Yeah. And also, they're accountants and CPAs. So they can also speak in a language that is native without the sort of accent that I have when I try and speak accounting and tax,
Right, having never been a CPA.
having never been a CPA.
Hmm.
So having all-star alumni who can look at, for example, a capacity planning spreadsheet where we make the hours of their business math and we make the money math and it's all got to work together, for them to be able to come in and say, "Oh, I see what you're doing." You're doing what I did, which was try and mess with the numbers because I don't like what the numbers are telling me. And here's what you need to do. And you're going to hate what the numbers tell you. They're going to make you want to vomit, but we need to get real about what the numbers are telling you. And I can say that ad nauseum, but when somebody has been through it, says it to the sort of white belt, it
Yeah.
it lands in a way that's so much more real.
Yeah, it's great. Cool. Well, what would you say to somebody that, I don't know, like, what's the takeaway here? I wanted to capture this because it was so fresh. And so what are the things that you would really want to maybe remember for yourself, or that if someone was going to perhaps do something like this kind of a transition, any advice or anything like that? Like, what, big picture wise?
Spend a lot of time thinking through your plan. As much time as you have, anyways. I
Hmm.
had 2 weeks, but I'm glad for every minute because we beat my offers to a pulp. And I'm really glad we did because it meant that the messaging, once it went out, was really clear. And that oiled or greased the skids and made it all smooth.
That is good. I remember we had one long phone call where we went all the way around and came back to where we started,
Hmm.
where, you're like, okay, what if the offer is this? Because you gotta, yeah, I mean, you gotta imagine, dear listener, you're hearing all of this in retrospect. At the time, it was like, what should the price be? Should it be
Uh-huh.
subscription at all? Are we
Yes.
just talking about moving people from Slack to Circle and keeping everything else the same, or is it a different model? Is it the same videos? Is it new videos? I mean, everything was up in the air potentially.
Yep.
So if I, just to sort of paint that picture quickly, it was a lot of, all right, what if it was this? Then what would happen? Then what would happen? Then what would happen? Who would you tell? How do we think they'll take that? How do we think they'll respond to that? And almost role playing the rollout.
Yeah.
And we probably changed at least three major um, factors or characteristics of what it could potentially be, at least three, and like ran through the whole scenario. Yeah, it was kind of like scenario planning, right? So, like, how will this land when it is finally made public? And it was like, how's that going to make, it was a lot of I remember, at least what I was thinking was, how's this going to make people feel when they hear it?
Mm-hmm.
And, it's like you've got these VIPs who have spent a certain amount of money, and you've got these people who have spent a lot of money, but but not the most. And then you've got people on your list and you get people in the community. It's like, how is it going to make this person feel when they hear this particular message, which is, I think, led to what we were talking about earlier, where that you sort of started in the center of the bullseye. It's like, okay, this is the innermost circle, and then the circle around that, and what's the messaging in each layer. I mean, it's all the same messaging, but it's a question of timing and word choice. It's
Yeah,
not, people aren't getting different offers, and yeah, so I think that's a great takeaway. It's like really, really think it through, because, the scenario I would say that you're in, and, for people listening to potentially identify with it, uh, is if you, dear listener, are thinking about melting down to the next level of the pyramid, so it gets, flatter and flatter and flatter, then you really want, you have to be careful about not killing the goose that laid the golden egg, basically. It's
yep,
like you've got this big amount of revenue coming in from this particular thing, and it's going to be better for everyone, including you, if you switch to this new thing. But how do you do it without cannibalizing your revenue? And
exactly.
yeah, and you didn't just talk to me. You had some friendlies in there that you did mention. You're like, what if this? And uh, but it was extraordinarily targeted. It wasn't like, let me shoot a message out to my mailing list and say, hey, what do you think if
Yeah, the teardown that I got back was astounding because it was almost all silence as she scrolled down the sales page,
Mm-hmm,
right? Usually it's full of feedback.
mm-hmm,
And this was like, this is great. This is great. Is yeah, this, yep, yep, yep.
cool.
There's like no edits. The other thing I would say is that it felt highly uncertain,
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't feel that risky.
That's interesting. Can you expand on that a little?
So there were so many details about the structure of the offer, both of them, that we changed up that we knew were better, but we still didn't know how people were going to respond. And we had this situation where, high touch clients from Mastermind coming into the terminal, plane is landing, but it's radio silence. And then new planes need to take off and go to their places. Um, and I didn't know for sure who was going to go where. I had some sense, but there were so many things I just didn't know exactly how they were going to play out.
Mm,
But but it's not like not knowing meant I had no clue.
mm-hmm.
It was like I had a pretty strong sense, but I wasn't going to know until other people made decisions. So there was a lot of uncertainty of just like every day was brand new, and what am I going to find out today? What am I going to learn today about what's happening, who's going where, what I need to say where. But it didn't feel risky because I knew that at the end of the day, I know my content, I know how to get results and transformations for my clients, and I know I have dozens, if not hundreds, of people around me who like what I'm putting down.
Mm-hmm.
And I have an email list of, depending on which way you measure, but like between, like roughly, we just call it 4,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like, so even though I was reshaping 2/3 of my top line revenue, I also knew that worst case scenario, I know how to build
Mm-hmm.
products that people get value out of.
Right.
So worst case scenario was like, I mean, if like really worst case scenario, if I managed to somehow shoot myself in the foot, would be like, I just relaunch, go back to the cohort model for a phase or two or three while I regroup. And it wouldn't be the end of the world. That would
Mm,
still work as a backup. So even though, yes, I really wanted this to roll smoothly, and I didn't exactly know how it was all going to play out, and every day felt like a brand new day, I also still felt like I was standing on solid ground.
right. Yeah, the impact wouldn't have been catastrophic.
No,
Right. Yeah,
even
and
though
like you
my
said,
mind wanted to believe that it was going to be.
yeah. Well, it's a lot of thinking. It's a lot of emotional labor. You want it to work. You don't want to
Yeah,
have to go back to square one for
right.
sure.
Yeah.
But it is, I do like your point about like your fundamentals around the material are proven. Like it's not even a
Yep.
question.
Yeah.
So really, this is all a packaging thing.
Yes.
It's a packaging exercise. So it's like the thing in the box is great. Like that's
Yes.
proven. So like,
Exactly.
will they like it in this box, or should I put it on the end cap, or should it be down the aisle?
Right. And does
you
it go
know,
in a white box with a black bow or a black box with a white bow? It's like
right.
the iPhone is great, right? So that now it's just a boxing question.
Hmm.
The other thing I would say is just being on the far side of it in terms of, takeaways is subscriber list growth rate, because shifting to community and melting the pyramid requires more people on your email list, right? So if you go from 1 to 1 to 1 to 10 to 1 to 100, your subscriber list has to reflect that, because as the prices go down and you sell to more volume,
Hmm.
you need to have more people to sell to,
Right. Right.
obviously.
Need more
Uh,
eyeballs.
yeah, but sometimes we don't do the math of the division by 0.02 conversion rate to, ask yourself, how many people, what does this mean for my subscriber list growth rate? And I've got to, if I want 5 people a month and I divide by 0.02, then you're looking at 250 new subscribers per month. And if I'm, let's just say, buying those with Facebook ads at $5 a pop, you're looking at 1250 in Facebook ad spend, and
Mm.
being like, and if it's $10 a pop, then it's 2,500 in Facebook ad spend. So you got to be like, okay, wait a minute, hold on. Like you got to
Yes.
make that transition alongside it, and not just expect that you can just keep going back to your existing subscriber list for seeking new community members,
Right.
because eventually that will, you'll dry out the well.
You'll get them all. Yeah. Like
Yeah,
everybody's
you get them
interest is
all.
gonna be there, right? So if you have someone on
Yeah.
your list for 3 years and they haven't bought it, well, they're probably not gonna buy it next month either.
Yeah. And then the other thing is just recognizing that you're swallowing the fish every time you do this.
Hmm. I don't know if
And
people are gonna get that.
oh,
that.
T and Zuo subscribe metaphor, where when you go from, selling a ticket with a price on it to selling something subscription based, that changes your revenue model.
Yeah. And it looks like a
And
fish. So.
it looks like a fish. The money curve looks like a fish.
Hmm.
So just recognizing that, oh yeah, oh, here I am again, swallowing the fish,
Yeah.
and letting that experience, like normalizing that experience, and not being like, oh shit, watch my revenue go down. It's like, no, my revenue is going to go down because I just went from selling something with a one-time price
Up
tag in
front.
April
Hmm.
upfront to a subscription. So of course that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And just
Yeah.
recognizing that that's where you are, and that's perfectly normal. It's not a problem.
Yeah. And I do want to amplify what you said earlier about just a minute ago about how the approach, your approach to, let's just say, list growth probably needs to evolve as you
Yeah.
switch down the layers of the pyramid. Like the stuff that works at the top of the pyramid is not the same stuff that works halfway down or at the bottom of the pyramid. It's different stuff.
Yep.
Cool. This
Yeah.
has been super duper helpful. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing that with everybody.
Thanks, Jonathan. It's always fun to talk to you.
It's always a pleasure. Where can people go to find out more about what you're doing?
Well, your people probably aren't CPAs, but I bet you they know a CPA. And if they know a CPA, they know an overworked CPA.
Yeah,
Yeah. So if you know an overworked CPA, the best thing to do is just point them to my website, where they can find the podcast, which is free, or the book, which is $10, or the community if they're ready to take action.
great. All right. Thanks again.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Okay, folks, that's it for this week. I'm Jonathan Stark, and I hope you join me again next time on Ditching Hourly.